Alright, so the Learning with Manga collaboration event should be going live the day after this video goes up, as over on the JP side of things, as soon as Sea Monsters Crisis ended, they brought in the Learning with Manga collaboration event, and with that event, we are going to be getting Super Bunyan as the headlining 5-star unit, which I know doesn't have a lot of people hyped, but I still want to put this video out there to let people know that she's not as bad as they probably think she is, but I'm not going to come out here and say that, oh, she's secretly this godly servant that everybody's been sleeping on, because she's not quite that good either. See, her whole mechanic revolves around a passive where she needs to generate this like self buff that she's able to give herself that buffs the damage of her NP. We'll talk about that more as we start getting into her kit, but that's kind of the crux of the problem with this servant. She is very reliant on getting these like statuses, because if she doesn't have them, her damage is kind of middling at best, but if you really can accrue a massive amount of these, she can start to do impressive damage, but again, that's the crux of the issue, is how consistently you're able to do that. So make sure you get comfortable, strap in, leave a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel if you like being well informed on the goings-on both versions of the FGO game. And also leave your thoughts in the comments down below, but only after I've talked about the servant so you can give me your full and accurate take. So as per usual, let's start off by diving into her kit, starting off with her hits. Now, for some reason, this is another thing that I'm not a huge fan of. They gave her a triple buster deck. I understand that they really want to go into the whole, she's big, she smashes stuff with big buster cards, but it is a bit unfortunate because I think with the way that FGO has kind of developed with their challenge quests and whatnot, that you really do want to have, say, a double arts, double buster deck if you are a buster servant to help out your characters like, say, Merlin consistently find their own NP. But this can be very nice if you're going to use her for, say, 90 plus or 90 plus farming, because that means most of her face cards, if you are reliant on that, are going to be buster cards. So that can also be a little nice. But just know if you're going into challenge quest oriented content, you do really want to prioritize that arts card whenever you do find it. It's fairly strong with 0.86% NP gain and 3 hits on it. You can get some pretty good NP refund back on a crit on the arts card. Again, it's just going to be kind of hard to get that arts crit because of how her third skill works and the fact that she's only got the 1 arts card. But they did give her the 5-hit extra attack, which you know I love to see, as the extra attack is a composite card that Gen Stars NP and does big boy damage. 5 hits is where you want to be, and so we like to see that on Super Bunyan. Now, I am going to talk about her passive skill right now, because usually I do talk about the passives if they're notable before the real skills. And as you'll see, yeah, she has magic resistance, item construction. That's kind of nice and all, but the main thing is that power of like EX that you see down there, where anytime she attacks, she gives herself a like buff for 3 turns, and whenever she is attacked, she also gains a like buff. I think this would be way better if she had a taunt on one of her skills. Obviously, you can help her out by, say, giving her Gouda Gouda Poster Girl if you've been playing the game for that long and you still have that CE, or if you want to go through the extra effort of, say, using Emiya Assassin, maybe you hit her with the Scapegoat, so then she has a taunt and you plug suit him out for another support. It's a little bit of extra effort, but it can help her get some of these buffs, because again, if she does get up to a nice amount of these, you know, 6, 7, 8, you know, even up to 10 if you're really, really lucky, maybe you're doing a solo, she could start to do really good damage. It's just, for me, I think you could get around the whole, you know, oh, she doesn't have a taunt or anything by using her as a solo servant, but she doesn't really have anything to make her conducive with soloing. You know, she doesn't have survivability or anything, and she's not like a ruler or something that's a very tanky class. So I think either way, you either give her more survivability in the future so she could thrive more as a solo unit, or you give her a taunt, something along those lines. But starting off with her skills, the first skill is just very strong. It's going to give her a self 30% attack buff for 3 turns and increase the party's buster performance by 20% for 3 turns on a 6-turn cooldown, effectively double buffing herself. It's kind of like the Karna and Arjuna thing where they can do some pretty good damage. They have a buster buff that comes with a separate NP damage buff, or it's like the Oni Charisma. They give themselves the attack buff and the NP damage buff. It does help out in ensuring that you're getting some pretty decent damage. Although I don't know why they're kind of bothering doing the party-wide Buster buff thing for everybody, because yeah, it's a callback to the original 1-star Bunyan that gives everybody a lot of buffs, but this one probably should have been a little bit more selfish. I mean, we definitely could have afforded to do, say, a 30% attack buff, which is nice, but then also, say, a 30% Buster buff, you know, something along those lines. And it also just seems a little lackluster now, you know, now that a lot of our servers are having like 3 or 4 effects on some of their skills. Her only having 2 gives off the impression that maybe she was supposed to come out during like year 5 or 4, you know, maybe she was actually supposed to release a bit earlier and she got pushed back, because it is a good skill, but it's a little dated. Moving over to her second skill, you kind of also feel that over here. It's a 30% battery, which is really nice, and it does overcharge the party's NP by 1 stage for 1 turn, which is very, very nice, but again, a little bit dated. The 30% battery is obviously nice. I mentioned earlier that you can use her in 90+ content. That's all fine, well and good. The 30% battery will allow her to be able to have some usage in that, and her being an alter ego, maybe if you're more free to play, your account isn't as good. Her being an alter ego, you know, you could use her against riders, assassins, casters, zerks. That's a pretty nice swath of people you can use her against. Sure, that might be a bit nice. And the overcharge is very strong, because again, if you're going to pair her with Merlin, that's extra stars you're getting on overcharge. If you're going to do the Immortal team comp, which again is a little hard because she only has 1 arts card, but not impossible, that gives Castoria extra solemn defense. If you're going to pair her with, for whatever reason, Proto Merlin, you just want to do that. Maybe you're just using your favorite servants, right? She's also going to give you extra stars. You know, anybody that you pair her with, even Koyenskaya, she'll give her extra NP whenever Koyenskaya fires her own NP. It's all really nice, but for some reason, it's only for 1 turn. Usually when people give these buffs, it is 1 stage for 3 turns. That way you have a little bit of leeway on when you fire the skill. But with Bunyan, there's really not a lot of downtime, and it's on a 6-turn cooldown. So you could fire this because you need the battery, but maybe your Merlin or whatever support you're using, your Waver, whoever have you, isn't ready to fire their NP. They're missing out on 1 stage of overcharge, which can be very, very powerful in CQ content especially, and so potentially missing out on that because it's only a 1-turn buff is a bit unfortunate. I do hope in the future that they kind of change this to being 1 stage for 3 turns. That way you don't feel as rushed to kind of have to perfectly align the stars to fire all the NPs at the exact same time, which again isn't impossible. It's just slightly annoying that you'll miss it sometimes, but still a very, very strong effect. Then finally there's her third skill, which I guess you could count as some form of survivability, because she does seal all enemies' NPs for 1 turn and reduces their critical attack chance by 30% for 3 turns and increases the party's crit star weight on their Buster cards for 3 turns. This is why I said it's going to be a little bit of a problem to get those arts crits, because clearly she wants to be doing big Buster crits, but you'll notice there was no crit damage buff, and spoiler alert, there's no crit damage buff on the NP either, so she wants everybody to be able to do these big Buster crits, but isn't providing any crit damage, so that seems, again, a little odd. And then, sure, reducing the enemy's critical attack chance is kind of nice, and sealing their NP is good, but, you know, we couldn't even throw her a dodge, an invincibility, even a Galatea-style defense buff, you know, something to make sure that Bunyan doesn't get beat up, you know, by the enemy, or that she could be somewhat of an effective solo servant. I mean, it's Paul Bunyan, like, in their whole mythos and whatnot, they're a huge, giant person. You would think a giant dude, or lady in this case, would be able to take a hit, but there's no survivability. It's super strange. There's not even, like, a HP per turn type thing to kind of give them a little bit of sustain. It's really, really weird. And I also just don't like the party Buster star weight, because you're using them with Merlin. You know, you'd prefer your Merlin to be getting those arts crits to refund his NP a bit easier, but now you're trying to make like DPS Merlin, DPS Koyenskaya. It's just a little wonky. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but thankfully the real power, if you want to use her, is just kind of a DPS, is in the first and second skill. You can kind of avoid going for the third skill, but it just kind of irks me a little bit, you know, myself, you know, and trying to use her. But yeah, that's her skills. I guess we'll not waste any time and just dive into the NP, which you can pretty much see is completely reliant on her getting those like stacks so that her NP can actually do some good damage, because her overcharge effect is lowering the enemy's defense by a whopping 10% for 3 turns. But with that overcharge, don't you worry, it's going to be 15%, which is so baffling, because usually When a servant has the lower defense on their NP, it starts at 20%. And if you're lucky, it'll also proc first, but for some reason, she got a lower percentage and it doesn't proc first, which again, does hurt her a lot. You could say, well, on subsequent NPs, she'll then do more damage, but because she's a triple buster deck servant, sometimes it can be a little difficult to find those extra NPs and consistently do back-to-back NPs. Thankfully, Koyan Sky is as good as she is. You know, she can help you refund your skill. She can give you 50% battery. She can give you refund on your buster cards. Thank goodness for that. But I think all in all, when you just look at her kit, there are definite holes and flaws in what she's doing. And I mean, again, if you look at the damage she's able to do, it's not super impressive. I mean, sure, she's the second strongest single target alter ego, I suppose, but Melt is completely blowing her out of the water, and it's not like the other competition is all that great. I mean, right under her is Sitanai, and we all know how everybody feels about Sitanai. I think we're a little too harsh on her, but yeah, she's definitely not the greatest servant. But hey, at least Sitanai, you know, she can do decent enough damage, I suppose, if you win the 80% chance to get her 20% attack buff. But for Bunyan, if you wanted to do similar damage or even more damage, you gotta put in a ton of work. It's not as simple as just, let me click this skill and hope that, you know, it works out, because you can also manipulate your buff chances and everything like that. For Bunyan, if you're willing to, you know, put in an arm and a leg to try to get those like buffs, you can get some really good high-powered damaging turns, but again, then you're just gonna like lose those like stacks again. And I don't know, I just felt like she could have been way better if she had a taunt, so, you know, she could take a bunch of the hits and maybe get at least 3 free like stacks guaranteed off rip, because, you know, the enemy attacks 3 times a turn. And if you happen to do a Brave Chain on that turn as well, you're already up to 7. That could be very nice. But she doesn't have a taunt, and you can't really use her as a solo. I mean, I'm not going to say you can't use her, but she's not the most effective servant to bring. You know, you could definitely bring better options. You could bring a friend Super Orion, a friend Ku Alter, a friend Qi Shi Huang, and they'll put in way more work in the solo than she ever could. And so that's why I say she's not a bad servant, she's not a good servant, she's painfully mid or painfully average. You know, this is a servant that will be able to do some nice things for you if you put in the work to use them, but you'll always just feel like you should probably be using somebody else. There is always just a better option. And in her case, technically that's true because Melt is right around the corner. If I'm going to use a alter ego single target that is going to kind of mess up my immortality team, you know, that Merlin and Castoria are going for, I'm at least going to spring for Melt, who can stack up crit damage, remove the enemy's buffs, has survivability, can do really good damage, etc., etc. So again, I don't want to be mean towards her, but this is not a servant I recommend summoning on unless you just really like learning with manga, you really like Bunyan, and that's really it. I can't even say, well, maybe you're a new player, because if you're a new player, just wait a couple of weeks. Castoria will come back and has a banger second banner with people like Yang on it that would be way better for you to use as a single target option. But that's just my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you have used Bunyan over on the JP side of things, let me know your experience in the comments down below. For me, it's been definitely a very mixed experience trying to get gameplay for Bunyan and trying to have her look somewhat decent in it. But yeah, with all things being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice rest of your day, and I hope you enjoy the event when it drops tomorrow, hopefully. You know, I'm really hoping that Lasengle doesn't swap the campaign dates on me, and then now I just look like a goofy goober.